So we're back then with video number 2 for the day. This is our second stream recap because there was actually a ton of interesting information in the stream. The first part was all about Spider-Man. The second part we have here is all about the raid. We found out a lot of information and how the difficulty will work and various different mechanics available within the raid. And yes, you will actually fight the huge claw that we see on the thumbnail, which is pretty amazing. And then on top of that, we have a really interesting breakdown of how the gear within the raid will work from Alex as well. He seems to have a lot of really interesting information, and he makes it hard for me to cut these streams down because just about everything he's telling us is actually relevant and once again interesting. As always, let me know in the comments below what you think about the information in this stream, and thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, and I'll see you all again soon.
Okay, so this is a shot from inside the raid, and what you're seeing in there's corrupted vibranium. And corrupted vibranium is a really big theme in the raid. What's going on in that room, and the room actually in game looks very similar to that. There's one person that has to do a really, really important job as part of a puzzle, and that room is very dangerous. There's something in that screenshot that you'll want to pay attention to. I'm not going to tell you exactly what, or probably obvious, but that's something that's very, very important to raid. This is a puzzle room. That big machine back there is something that needs to be activated and controlled. And as you can see, it's got like multiple layers. So there's players at the bottom, players on top, and we're using the entire space in that activity. And I say puzzle, it's a mix of fighting and interactions. This is the Wakanda jungle. This is outside of the raid just before you actually go inside. And you'll immediately start seeing like some of the corrupted vibranium, and it's dark and it's raining, and really like as a contrast to the campaign, like Wakanda's really, really dark because, you know, corrupted vibranium is spreading, claws up to no good. This is inside a Wakanda temple. Like it's not too far in the raid. It actually shows some of the corrupted vibranium and some of the corrupted Wakanda architecture. This room is interesting. That statue actually isn't in the game anymore because we decided to put a mini boss fight in there. So we actually added a new mini boss that you haven't seen before, and that boss is going to be exclusively found in the raid. So that statue traded its spot for a boss. So this is pretty cool. This is inside the Vibranium Mound. So this is basically where you'll be fighting in the raid, but we did that concept art before we did all the corrupted vibranium on top of it. So this is what it would have looked like before Claw started corrupting it. And this, well, I'm assuming you know who that is. Now you might be thinking, is this just concept art? You're not really going to put a giant claw in your raid, are you? Yeah, we are. We are. And you might be thinking like, well, you're just going to put it as decoration in the back, right? Nah, you're going to fight it. So this room, super exciting. You're going to team up with Shuri in here, actually. I won't tell you exactly what you need to do, but there's a problem to solve. The problem's probably pretty apparent for what you see in the room. So you'll team up with Shuri and solve that. And all of these things tie together in how you're going to be able to defeat Claw inside the raid. The raid, it's a long piece of content, so it does take a while to get through it. Here's what's really important. Talk to each other when you play the raid. You have roles to do. Most of the heroes can do all the roles, but if you get really smart about it, you can actually get extremely efficient about how you do the raid. So in some of the puzzles, if say you have something that you need to damage, well, it's better if you have some people that are dedicated to that, and then other people do other things, right? So it's really hard to explain exactly how to do it without giving spoilers. But for example, I was talking about the room with Shuri where you have to help her out, and can you bring back that screenshot?
I can. Give me a second.
So in that room, the way it works is you've got some people that need to take care of an objective, you've got some people that need to control a part of the level, and you've got somebody that needs to go outside the room actually to do something. So if you really think about it, like you have to evaluate what does the environment look like? Like, what are the enemies? Like, is the person going out going to be able to survive that? The people staying inside, are they going to be tough enough to hold the point, or should we trade roles, right? So if you just kind of try to go about it like you would in another war zone, it's really difficult because in a raid, we don't put a lot of objective icons on everything. You kind of have to figure out the puzzle by yourselves, right? So as you figure it out, you kind of have to talk to each other and go, hey, I just turned on this thing. What do you guys see? Hey, there's a symbol that just lit up. Like, there's a lot of these things that you need to talk about. So in terms of role-based, it's really the first time I feel that we've got a level where it matters. Like, and Andy can attest to that, like, because he plays it a lot with us.
Mm-hmm.
If you have like a dedicated Kamala healer, that's awesome. Like, that's great. That will super work out. If you have like one hero that's really good at AoE damage, then you'll want to be spec'd out for that and be like, cool, when there's like fights with a lot of ads, or even like a boss that has a phase where there's a lot of ads, because that's something that we have in the raid. We have bosses with phases. Remember how much you like, what we're doing with Family Reunion? This is more of that. So there's not a single boss that just kind of sits there and asks to be sponge damage. Like, everything has like phases. You have to understand what's going on. And it definitely ramps up in difficulty. Like, the puzzles are cool and all, and the phases are great, but really, like, for us, we wanted to do like a giant boss monster, and that's like, you could ask anybody on the team, like, that's something that we've been talking about since the beginning. Like, we wanted the Avengers to fight something gigantic. Like, I know it's a spoiler, but at this point it's been a while. Like, there's a Kree sentry in the campaign, right? And it's cool because you get to smack it around with Kamala. But I always wanted to have a fight where you could bring all your systemic gameplay to it. So that's a huge part of that raid, is just having you fight these giant, seemingly uncontrollable monsters, and how do you actually pull that off, right? So it's very epic, it's very, very challenging, but it's also like a very satisfying end to what's been going on with the Wakanda campaign. So Claw kind of escaped at the end. You're like, oh, he's not quite destroyed. But in this raid, you actually get to go after him and put an end to Claw, since he's threatening all of Wakanda. Like, it's super high stakes, and I'm super excited because you get to team up with all the heroes from Wakanda. So you'll see Shuri, you get to team up with Okoye, and you get to team up with also, which I think is probably the most surprising for people, but you'll get to team up with Zavari. I'm not going to tell you what Zavari does in the raid, because it's so absolutely awesome that I'm excited for you guys to see it. So it'll be super, super badass. That's a lot of the high level about the raid. I'm super excited about it. Yes, Zavari magic. Questions, we'll do it at the end. Before we go into raid gear, so one of the things we want to talk about is Tachyon Surge. So Tachyon Surge, super, super good. Ended up getting fixed, super, super bad after. We get it. That ended up not really playing out the way that we wanted. So Tachyon Surge is going to be coming back. Now, Tachyon Surge will come back, but not as a 20-second buff like it used to be before. It'll come back as a 10-second buff. So your gear will still be as good as it was. You'll still get a lot of damage out of it, but it was just completely overpowered the way it was. I think you guys know that. Like, it made everything so bad, in comparison. Which, again, we kind of get what we did there, but that doesn't mean we won't fix it in the future. So by fix it, I mean, like, the idea isn't to take away the stuff that you guys have. It's to make things that are competitive, right? So when we kind of looked at the raid, we were talking about it. We said, look, if we're gonna give them back Tachyon Surge, cool, but let's make some raid gear that's competitive so that it does feel like an obvious upgrade from the Tachyon Surge stuff. That way, if you go to the raid with your Tachyon Surge gear, you're going to feel like you totally want the raid. The Star of Gear, tell us about the raid gear, man. What do we have in store?
What are people going to get from the raid?
Absolutely. Before I get into that, let's get some important information out of the way, which is the reward cadence that players will have when going after the Claw raid. So you will get a weekly mission chain, again, per hero. I want to reiterate that. You are going to have a weekly mission chain per hero for the Claw raid that will give you our standard on our split type of rewards. You will get one piece of discordant gear from the melee and range slot. You'll get one piece of discordant gear for the defense and heroic slot. You'll also get one raid exclusive minor artifact that will have some of the new perks and have access to a slightly modified minor artifact perk pool. So you'll get 3 rewards off of that. When we go to and of course again, you will also get a random piece of discordant gear for completing the mission, because we changed that. Same with a family reunion. You'll
Every
get
time.
Omega gear every time.
Every
Absolutely
time.
every
Just wanted
time.
to-
You'll go
wanted to
through.
Throw that out there again.
Yep. Constantly reminding people, you will get that again. When you go to the elite raid, or when you finally when you're at a milestone that you can attempt the elite discordant sound raid, you'll get another mission chain. These are 2 different mission chains. You can complete them both. That one will also give you a melee ranged discordant piece, but it has the elite elite signifier on it. 1 defensive heroic elite, and you'll get 2 raid exclusive minor artifacts for completing that particular mission chain, as well as a random piece of elite discordant gear from completing the mission. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about this with 2 caveats from last stream after reading a lot of feedback. There was a lot of feedback talking about preferred attributes being fixed to certain types, being fixed to certain slots, and all of that. And we are reading that. We understand that that is a rough point for a lot of players, and we are looking to alleviate that in the future. Removing it kind of makes it rough for the other players, so we want to give an option in the future that preferred attributes are a stepping stone to a better system. For right now, we will still have preferred attributes for the claw raid gear, but that doesn't mean it's set in stone. We're always looking to make these systems better. So preferred attributes for discordant gear are going to be might, precision, valor, and resilience, heavily going to melee range plus heroic, plus obviously some defensive capabilities, which you are probably going to need when you go into the raid. And then of course preferred status effects are sonic and vibranium. Of
Makes
course
sense.
they are.
Yes, of course.
So, Discordant Gear has 4 huge themes. And the first being Sonic Conduit. Sonic Conduit is very much a team-oriented perk. Sonic Conduit will always be the 3rd perk on your heroic item that you get. Get it? The 3rd perk will always be Sonic Conduit. You don't have to worry about RNG on that. Sonic Conduit says that when you get next to an enemy under the Sonic status effect, it has a little ball, you get bonus intrinsic energy, bonus heroic energy. You send part of that benefit to nearby teammates. You become the sender, allies become the receiver. This is not as good as staying next to an enemy, but they will get a small bump in their heroic energy and intrinsic energy. That will happen even if they don't have any discordant gear. Sonic Conduit. I stand next to guy under Sonic status effect. I send part of that benefit to nearby allies. Great. That's not the end of it. Every other piece of gear can roll with a perk that says granting or receiving. If you are giving the Sonic Conduit, perks turn on. If you are receiving the Sonic Conduit, perks turn on. So this is kind of coming back to the aspect of a lot of people want set bonuses, and there's a lot of technical stuff that has to happen, and this is a stepping stone towards that. The more pieces of discordant gear you have, the more things turn on when Sonic Conduit is activated. Again, if I only care about receiving Sonic Conduit, I don't have to have that perk. I just have to have perks that take that in. If Hulk has Sonic Conduit but doesn't like applying Sonic to the enemy, I'll find one of those Hulk players, but I don't think there is any. He doesn't want to apply Sonic to that enemy. He doesn't have to. I can apply Sonic to that enemy. He can still channel Sonic Conduit to everybody. We all get that benefit. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite and so Sonic Conduit, all of these perks based off Sonic Conduit, there are some that are universal that grant you armor or hit react armor, and then there are some that are hero specific, with one of my favorite being granting aim for Hulk, which while sending the Sonic Conduit buff, you increase your rock damage when used as a melee weapon. it's around 80% increased rock damage
It's a lot.
when used as a melee weapon. It is absolutely. So you can also have both buffs. If there are two melee characters next to an enemy and they both have Sonic Conduit, they both send and receive to each other. So you can have on all of those effects. A big highlight of all Sonic Conduit buffs is you're not going to see the word chance. They're on or they're off. Moving on from that is status efficiency perks. In order to make sure that you always get interesting stuff on all gear, the melee and range gear had to be modified very specifically, because I want to give you a lot of attacks that apply Sonic and Vibranium, but I also don't want to take up 2 of the slots. So what we did were status efficiency perks, which fundamentally combine 2 status effect perks into 1, with some exceptions in there. So for Hulk, he'll get on a status effect perk that says, I apply the Sonic status effect to small and large rocks. Or with Iron Man, it will be, I apply the Vibranium status effect to light combo enders and light signature attacks. This is obviously there on Reddit. There's all the people that are like, just give it to me on all light attacks. It is a thought. It is a piece of feedback. We have definitely heard that before. This is one of those stepping stones to eventually get to that, to see how well that plays. Giving you 1 perk that applies a status effect to many attacks. And of course, when we talk about, and these are all hero specific, of course. There are some of them that are like heavy combo ender. That goes to everybody. But for Hawkeye players, you're going to get one that's like, oh, apply Sonic status effect to light combo finishers and split shot. So, great. It also lowers the amount of perks that you could potentially get in that. So you have a much higher chance of getting stuff that apply to the attacks you want. Now, for all the heroes that only had 2 attack types for their range gear, Kamala, Thor, Captain America, you basically have 2 choices. You only have 2 perks. Sonic, Vibranium, because their perk attacks, or their perk attack types, only had 2 options. So there you go. It's going to attack everything. Iron Man will be the only one that has unique work there, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I want to see people's. I want to see people experience that. So that is for the status effect perks for the ranged and melee gear. The third theme of this is hero gear additions. We wanted hero specific perks because those are more interesting. Those are fun. If the theme of the gear was just this blanket universal buff, then it doesn't matter who you get the gear on, because it'll all play the same. So we wanted to apply a lot of hero-specific additions. In addition to the hero-specific additions from the Sonic Conduit, we wanted to do other stuff. So we took some of the greatest hits from hero gear sets, as well as making a few new ones to throw in there. So again, for all you Hawkeye mains out there, breaking your triangle button on your controller.
Hawkeye mains.
If you want if you want the split multiplier, you'll have to play the Discordant Raid, but you'll only get it on the Elite gear, which is kind of tying into the whole thing of the Elite gear has some perks exclusive to it versus the normal gear. So if you want those really cool perk combinations, you got to go for the more difficult one. And then, so on top of that, we had some of the new hero perks. We tried to the complexity of something like Split Multiplier was a little bit outside of my range in the very beginning, but I was able to get a couple other things in there to attack skills and to kind of elevate those skills a little bit higher because they were underutilized by heroes. Captain's Charge is a buff for Captain America, which is interesting because it's basically a latent damage buff that he can proc all the time. It's just on a skill that's a little clunky to do. So one of his new hero-specific perks is Countercharge. Performing a light counterattack activates Captain's Charge, and he has 4 skills that either can increase the duration or allow you to refresh the buff. Small things like that, allowing you to make a different build, making you a different combat style. And again, of course, to help you in some of these aspects. Captain America, with that type of perk, with Rally Cry Defender, can last much longer in a fight all by himself, help you in the raid. And that comes to our final theme of Discordant Gear, which is the most complicated theme, but is genuinely one of the more interesting ones. This is the one that in my spec, my original spec when I was planning this out, Phil called this out. He's like, that sounds cool. I want that, which is status leak. Under, you have an attack condition. There's an enemy condition.
I like that one.
It looks way cool. I was so happy with how it looks. But you have an attack condition. You have an enemy condition. If both conditions are true, you are going to spread leak the status effect or a status effect to nearby enemies. Sonic Conduit is you spreading an effect to your team. Status leak is you spreading a status effect to the enemies.
So cool.
Or to enemies around it. So, as an example, Vibranium Double Leak is a perk that you can get on range gear, which says that if you attack an enemy under the Sonic status condition with Vibranium damage, you will spread Vibranium status effect to nearby enemies. You're going to see some small numbers come up that are purple and all that, but it does more build up. It does more status meter build up than actual damage, allowing you to spread that. There are going to be 5 status leak perks in the Discordant set that all spread Vibranium, Shock, or Cryo based on different conditions. So Vibranium Double Leak is very clear. I do Vibranium, I spread Vibranium. But the Shock status leak is enemy is under Sonic status effect, I attack him with Vibranium, I spread Shock to nearby enemies, allowing you to do status effects outside of the gear that you currently have. And the one other perk I wanted to talk about in this reveal that doesn't really fit into all of those other things because we were able to slide in a couple of other stuff because why not, is Perk Breaker, which is going to be a perk that shows up on one of the minor artifacts, which is it increases damage from perks by 200%. Not the effect a perk gives, but any attack or any perk that does an attack, a payload style perk, for instance, will get that damage increased. And there are 3 perks in Discordant Gear that do perk damage. So this is one of those that is going to play off of interesting build ideas.
And the Alex talked about it a little bit. The gear that you get in the raid is really useful for playing the elite version of the raid, right? And that's something that we've wanted to do for a long time, is making gear that really matters. So you'll definitely see a lot of benefits. And actually, I'll kind of use the opportunity to kind of talk about that real quick. But the elite version of the raid, it's not just like a power level up on the enemies. Like, it's not that. Like, it's a lot of mechanics in the raid that are different. There's enemies that have different behavior. The bosses don't all do the same things. So it's actually different in functionality. Now, it's not like completely different. It's a spin on mechanics and on the fights. But it was really important for us to give you something where if you get really, really good at doing the raid, then when you go to the elite version, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I have to pay more attention now. Oh, wow, this is a lot more challenging. And eventually, when you work your way all the way up to 175, then you'll get to feel like a badass, triumphing over the elite version. But really, you're going to get a pretty good difficulty hike between normal raid and the elite version. And I'm super excited about that because we've wanted to do difficulty increases that aren't just power level based for a long time. So that's something that's really cool.